Podcasting from Woodstock, Georgia, welcome to Soul Solutions, a show where we overcome our fears and our limiting beliefs. I'm your host, author, and certified life coach, Terry Kozlowski. Hello, warriors. I was so honored to have been a featured guest on the Resiliency Factor podcast. The show explores real, raw, vulnerable, and unscripted conversations with resilient entrepreneurs around the world. Please check out the interview, episode 18, titled Overcoming the Egoic Mind to Create a Meaningful and Joyful Life. The link is in the show notes. Now let's start this week's episode. Episode 40. How to handle distractions to accomplish your goals easily. I write every week, mostly when I'm alone, because inevitably I get interrupted. It could be a phone notification, the puppy in my lap wanting to get a drink, or noise from outside my window. The distraction disrupts my train of thought, and sometimes I'm unable to get back on track. When I was researching this article, it surprised me to learn that our brains are wired for distraction. Why? Because if something else is more enjoyable, interesting, or threatening, then our brains will respond and we get a dopamine reward. During our evolution, this disturbance was an excellent tactic to notice a bear approaching or investigating a potential food source. But in today's society, our ability to notice something for our survival isn't essential. Now, interruptions pull us away from being productive or concentrating on a task we are trying to accomplish. Social media, emails popping into our inbox, or a cell phone notification is more likely to make us feel good quickly than finishing a chore on our to-do list. But we all still have tasks we must complete, despite the distractions that interrupt us. Good concentration requires discipline, and it's a skill we can learn. So how can we quickly get back on track and accomplish the goals we have? Awareness of what's causing us to get distracted helps us set up the right conditions to be productive and focused. Setting up for productivity. The best way to deal with distractions is to set ourselves up for success by creating an idyllic atmosphere for us to focus on the task at hand. Gather up the items for the project. Turn off notifications on the computer and cell phone. Don't gasp. We're going to work in bursts of about 40 or 50 minutes, so we won't be out of touch for too long. Now let's visualize ourselves working. See the first step and envision ourselves completing it, and then the next until the item is finished. We're working on one thing at a time. The act of visualization helps our minds concentrate on each step in the process so that our body follows through to help us accomplish our goals. If we start each day with meditation, focusing becomes easier for us. Why? Because contemplation through meditation is the act and practicing of focus. Another way for us to concentrate is to work on one task for a set amount of time, no more than 40 or 50 minutes, and then take a 5-minute break. This method allows our brains to rest, regroup for the next period of focused work. Another way to trick our minds into concentrating on a job is to give ourselves a deadline. This urgency forces the brain to focus on accomplishing the task. The stress of time limit causes people who procrastinate to complete the item before it's too late. Knowing the goal keeps distractions at bay. We all have a lot we'd like to accomplish each day. We all have the same amount of time, and if we are determined what the goals are for the day, we most likely will complete the items. What are the most important time-sensitive items on our to-do list? Once we have this first aim lined up, we can either break down the goal into steps or tackle it straight on, depending on what it is. For example, there are many steps to the overall process to write an article and record my show, Soul Solutions. If I look at the entire process, it can be quite overwhelming. So I take each step separately. Research is distinct from writing and revising. And the recording and editing is also a specific task before it finally all gets posted. These well-defined steps allow me to focus on one area until I complete it before the entire process consumes my mind. When we have an intention, it helps us stay focused. Prioritizing what we want to accomplish allows our minds not to be exhausted just by looking at our to-do list. Those items that aren't as important can be put off to later when we may not need to be focused entirely on the task. If we get stuck on something for more than a few moments, move on to the next item. This keeps us from getting distracted by the issue that arose. And maybe while we're plugging along at something else, a resolution will present itself. Are we self-sabotaging? Many times we are distracting ourselves. We may unconsciously do it, like chatting with our friends or getting up for a drink, which slows down and disrupts our focus. 3 issues arrive we don't see as causing disruptions: perfectionism, procrastination, and negative self-talk. Although we all strive to do our best work, when we look at perfecting our output, it becomes a distraction from accomplishing the overall goals. Perfecting each detail wastes time we could work on the next task. Procrastination is the egoic mind determining something isn't important of our time until it becomes a stressful thing we suddenly have to complete. Delaying for any reason usually causes stress, loss of productivity, and a less than stellar result because we didn't give the task the time it was due. When our inner critic comes out and tells us the next item we need to accomplish is too complicated, so we don't even try the task, or we put it off for another time. This type of thinking causes procrastination. When our self-talk says we have to do everything right, it leads to perfectionism. We need to have encouraging self-talk so our productivity doesn't suffer. We can do this by looking at the situation clearly and breaking down any complex steps. The first step in eliminating self-sabotage is to realize it so we can deal with our destructive behaviors. The lie of multitasking. I've been told that I'm a high performer because I can go through a to-do list quickly. I've worked in hectic office settings with many disruptions and can get tasks completed. My secret is that I work on one item until it's done. Now, I may have to stop to do an urgent thing for someone, but I go back to that task I was working on before I was interrupted. Because I've stopped working on another job for someone and still completed my task list, people think I'm a great multitasker. I've even put it on my resume. But the reality is that I give what I'm working on my full attention. And that is how I became a high performer. I only focus on one thing at a time. Our brain can only give so much attention to any undertaking. Therefore, multitasking is the lie the ego uses to keep us from being as productive as possible. To focus means that we are only working on one thing at a time. How can we split our thinking over more than one task and think that we will do our best? Suppose we are trying to process information and use it for the desired outcome. In that case, we need all of our brain power to complete it correctly. Multitasking is a subtle form of self-sabotage because we lie to ourselves and think we are doing more than we are, and the work completed is not our best. Removing external distractions. On average, over 25% of our time in the office is spent trying to refocus from being disrupted. Clearly, we need to learn to cut out as many distractions as possible if we want our productivity to increase. My space in the office is Grand Central Station between upper management and other personnel. I am the hub of information and notification. I get most of the calls, most of the questions routed to me, and I'm the one who picks up the slack to move a project forward. If you have a door, shut it. If you're like me and don't, then learning to hold up a finger and letting someone know I'll be with you in a moment so that I can complete my train of thought. Yes, everyone thinks that they have the most urgent need. Still, when we are interrupted, we're responsible for asking when they need the item completed, or to let them know we won't be able to get their task until the one we're working on is finished. Electronics have helped and hindered our efficiency. These are tools, not crying babies that need our immediate attention. To keep us focused, turn off notifications and alerts, or pause them for 40 or 50 minutes to get the work completed. Then take 5 minutes to look at the items/distractions that want our attention. Block times twice a day to respond to emails and messages received and give them the focus they need. The ego uses distractions to keep us stuck. The egoic mind knows how to keep us preoccupied with other things. It does this to keep us stuck and unaware. After I began the healing process for my childhood trauma, my ego kept me busy instead of working through the healing process. It used my desire to help others as a distraction from helping myself. When we allow the egoic mind to divert our attention from ourselves, we stay unaware. And as we've seen, awareness is the first step in healing, growing, and changing. Since the ego wants to keep things as they are, it works hard to keep us oblivious. Since our ego knows us the best, it uses perfectionism, procrastination, and negative self-talk as mechanisms to keep us confused and diverted. And when we are sidetracked, we aren't looking for those things that would improve our lives. We must awaken to this lie of the ego and realize we can have the life we desire. We need to listen to the whispers of our hearts and move forward with awareness. When we do, we allow our authenticity to rise and become all we are meant to be. Moving forward by learning not to get distracted. We need to recognize there are distractions everywhere, and if we generally don't want to work, we will find something else to give our time. All we have to do is wait a few moments for the next notification from our cell phone. The time it takes to look at the alert is time draining from our productivity. Learning to focus is a crucial skill we all need. It requires a conscious effort because we need to overcome our self-sabotaging, organize our actions, and put tools in place. As we become more aware of our distractions, we can learn to deal with them so they don't sidetrack our productivity. Do you need support to help you deal with distractions? Do you want a strategy to help you overcome the ego's limiting beliefs and live a successful life? If so, please reach out to me at terrykozlowski.com and we can put together an action plan to create the life you desire. Thanks for listening to Soul Solutions with Terry Kozlowski. If you'd like the show and want to learn more, check out terrykozlowski.com where you can find the links to everything we talked about in this episode. Please subscribe to the show so you'll never miss an episode as we overcome our fears and our limiting beliefs.